The morning sunlight spilled gently over the rolling hills of Vermont, casting a golden glow on the tiny chapel that stood at the edge of Pinebrook Lake. The air smelled faintly of roses, wet grass, and the faint sweetness of morning dew. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and for a while it was. Evelyn Carter stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the reflection staring back at her. The lace veil framed her face like mist caught in sunlight. Her hair, usually a cascade of curls, was pinned delicately beneath a pearl comb her mother had given her before she died. "You look like an angel," whispered her best friend Nora as she adjusted the veil. Evelyn smiled weakly. "An angel who's terrified of falling," Nora chuckled, brushing imaginary dust off the wedding gown. "Falling? You're marrying Daniel Morgan, the town's golden boy. He literally built a house for you on the lake. You're not falling, you're floating." Evelyn tried to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. She looked out the window where the chapel stood, its white wooden frame glowing under the early sun, surrounded by fields of autumn orange and gold. Everything looked picture perfect. But something inside her chest felt wrong. Last night she'd had a dream, vivid and cold. She saw herself walking down the aisle, the crowd frozen like mannequins. The priest had no face, and when she lifted her veil, Daniel's eyes were hollow, black pits dripping with water. She'd woken up gasping, her heart thundering in her ears. She told herself it was wedding stress, that was all. By noon, guests began arriving. Cars lined the gravel road, their headlights winking in the sun. The lake shimmered peacefully behind the chapel, reflecting the sky like glass. The string quartet played softly, and laughter drifted across the field. Inside the bride's room, Evelyn's father, Henry Carter, entered quietly. He was a tall man with silver hair and a soft, tired smile. He'd raised her alone after her mother died 10 years ago. "Evie," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "you look just like your mother did on her wedding day." Evelyn turned, eyes misting. "I wish she were here." Henry placed his hands on her shoulders. "She is. She's watching." But as he said it, a sudden gust of cold air swept through the room. The candle near the mirror flickered and went out. Evelyn felt her skin prickle. Nora frowned. "Did someone open a window?" Henry checked. "No windows open." They laughed it off, but Evelyn couldn't shake the chill creeping up her spine. When the ceremony began, the chapel filled with warmth and the scent of lilac. Daniel stood at the altar, handsome in his charcoal suit, his blue eyes soft when he looked at her. The moment she entered, he smiled, and the crowd turned to see the bride. Her father walked her slowly down the aisle. She felt the wood creak beneath her shoes, once, twice, then again. She tightened her grip on his arm. "You okay?" Henry whispered. "Yeah," she lied. Halfway down the aisle, she felt something brush her veil, lightly, like fingertips grazing it. She turned, but no one was behind her. The music played on. At the altar, Daniel took her hands. "You look beautiful," he whispered. She smiled shakily. "You too." The priest, Father Raymond, began the vows. His voice was calm, deep, reassuring. But as he spoke, Evelyn's eyes drifted to the far right pew. A woman sat there, pale, motionless, wearing a black dress and a torn veil. Her eyes were fixed on Evelyn. She blinked, and the woman was gone. Her pulse raced. She tried to focus on the vows, repeating words she barely heard. "I do," Daniel said. "I do," she whispered. The crowd clapped. The organ swelled. The newlyweds kissed, and the bells rang across the lake. But outside, clouds began gathering, covering the sun. The reception was held in a restored barn near the lake. Fairy lights hung from the rafters, candles flickered on every table, and music filled the air. Everyone laughed, danced, and drank champagne. Evelyn tried to smile, tried to feel the joy everyone expected from her. But every time she glanced toward the lake through the open barn doors, She saw the water darkening, a mirror turning to ink. Around sunset, she slipped away from the crowd. She needed air. The lake shimmered under the fading light. Mist began to curl over the surface like ghostly breath. She removed her shoes, letting her toes sink into the damp earth. "That's where Daniel proposed," said a voice behind her. Evelyn turned. It was Mrs. Morgan, Daniel's mother. A tall, elegant woman with sharp eyes and a calm smile. "Yes," Evelyn said softly. "Right there on that dock." Mrs. Morgan stepped closer. "You know, I dreamed about this day once. I saw you in that exact dress, standing right here. Only—" She paused. "Only what?" Evelyn asked. Mrs. Morgan smiled faintly. "You weren't alone in the dream." Before Evelyn could ask what she meant, the woman turned and walked back toward the barn. A cold wind rippled through the trees. Evelyn looked at the lake again, and this time she saw someone standing on the dock. A woman, the same woman from the chapel. Her torn veil fluttered, and her pale hands dripped water. Evelyn froze. "Hello," she whispered. The woman tilted her head. Her face was swollen, pale, and blue. Water streamed from her mouth. She raised one hand, pointing toward Evelyn. Evelyn stumbled back, gasping, and then blinked. The dock was empty. Her heart hammered in her chest. She turned to run, but Daniel was suddenly there, catching her arm. "Evie, what's wrong?" She stared at him, trembling. There was someone on the dock. He frowned. "There's no one there." "You're shaking." "I saw her, Daniel." She was wearing a torn veil. He cupped her face. "Hey, it's just the nerves. Everything's fine, okay? You've barely eaten." "Come on, let's go back inside." Evelyn hesitated, but nodded. Inside, the music played louder, laughter echoing through the barn. Yet the lights flickered now and then, dimming for a second longer each time. Evelyn tried to ignore it. She danced with Daniel, her head resting on his shoulder. His heartbeat was steady, comforting. But over his shoulder, through the reflection of a glass window, she saw something moving. A shadow gliding across the far wall, tall, thin, and wearing white. The music faded in her ears. She turned her head. Nothing there. "Evia?" Daniel whispered. "You okay?" She nodded quickly. "Yeah," but she wasn't. The air inside felt heavy. Her head throbbed. When the cake was brought out, everyone gathered around, cheering. Daniel held the knife with her, smiling for the cameras. They cut into the cake, and laughter filled the room again. But when Evelyn pulled the knife back out, red liquid dripped from it. Everyone gasped. She dropped the knife, backing away. What is that?" Daniel frowned, touching it. "It's strawberry filling." The crowd laughed awkwardly, but Evelyn couldn't breathe. She swore she saw the red drip thicker, darker, like blood. She ran outside again, gasping for air. The night had deepened. The lake looked like black glass now, still and endless. The mist hung low, wrapping the trees. Evelyn's pulse raced as she tried to calm herself. "It's just my imagination," she whispered. "Just nerves." Then a voice, soft, whispering, "Run while you can." She froze. The voice came from behind her. She turned, and there, standing between the trees, was the woman again, closer this time. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, and her wedding dress was torn, dripping water onto the earth. Evelyn's breath hitched. "Who are you?" The woman stepped forward. "Don't let him." Before she could finish, her head snapped to the side, as if something yanked her violently backward into the shadows. Evelyn screamed. Daniel came running from the barn. "Evia!" "What happened?" She pointed to the trees. There was someone, but the space was empty. Only mist. He pulled her close. "Okay, that's it. You need to rest." "Come on, let's go back to the cabin." Evelyn didn't argue. Her body shook uncontrollably. As Daniel led her down the path toward their honeymoon cabin by the lake, she glanced back, and in the reflection of the lake, she saw it clearly for the first time. 2 brides, one alive, one dead, and the dead one was smiling. The cabin Daniel had built for them stood at the edge of Pinebrook Lake, small, quiet, and beautiful. The kind of place couples dreamed of spending their honeymoon. A place far from the noise of the world, but tonight it felt wrong. The air inside was heavy, thick with silence. Daniel unlocked the door and helped Evelyn inside. "Sit down," he said gently, taking her veil off. "You need to breathe." Evelyn sank into the couch, her hands trembling. "I'm not crazy, Daniel." I saw her again, the woman in the torn veil. She said something. He knelt in front of her. "Evie, listen to me. You've had a long day. You didn't eat, you barely slept. Your mind's just tired." She looked into his eyes, those deep blue eyes that had always made her feel safe. But tonight, there was something distant behind them, something unreadable. He stood, poured her a glass of water, and handed it to her. "Drink this. I'll make some tea." Evelyn took a slow sip, her gaze wandering around the cabin. It was cozy, stone fireplace, wooden beams, the faint scent of cedar. But as her eyes moved to the mantel, she froze. There was a photo frame, old, silver, slightly tarnished. In it, Daniel stood with another woman in a wedding dress. Her heart stopped. "Daniel," she whispered, "who is this?" He turned, his hand tightening around the teapot. "What? This photo?" She pointed, her voice trembling. "Who is she?" He stared at it for a moment too long before walking over and taking it down. "That's my cousin. It's an old picture. I must have forgotten to pack it away." Evelyn's stomach twisted. He was lying. She could see it in his eyes. "Your cousin?" She repeated softly. He smiled tightly. "Yes, don't think too much, okay? You've had enough stress for one day." He turned back to the kitchen, but Evelyn couldn't stop staring at the photograph now lying face down on the mantel. The woman in it had the same torn veil. Later that night, rain began to fall. It came suddenly, a heavy downpour that rattled the roof and turned the lake into rippling glass. The storm's rhythm filled the silence. Evelyn lay in bed beside Daniel, unable to sleep. His breathing was steady, calm. But hers wasn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that woman, pale face, dripping veil, whispering from the shadows. She turned on her side, staring at the window. Lightning flashed. For an instant, she saw a reflection. A figure standing outside the glass. Her again. Evelyn screamed. Daniel woke up instantly. "What is it?" "She's outside, look." He jumped up, rushed to the window, and pulled the curtains open. Rain pounded against the glass, but there was no one there. Only the lake, black and endless. Daniel turned back to her, frustration flickering in his eyes. "Evelyn, enough. There's nothing there. I'm not imagining it." She cried. "She's real." He sighed heavily and sat on the edge of the bed. "Evie, do you trust me?" She hesitated. "Of course. Then trust that I'll protect you. Please. Try to sleep." He leaned in, kissed her forehead, then turned off the lamp. But long after he closed his eyes, Evelyn stayed awake, staring into the dark, and swore she heard someone whisper her name through the storm. "Evelyn." The next morning, Daniel was gone. A note sat on the nightstand. "Had to drive into town for something. Be back soon. Love you." Evelyn stared at it for a long moment. Something about it felt cold, impersonal, like he'd written it for someone else. She got out of bed, wrapping herself in a robe, and stepped outside. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy and damp. Mist still hung over the lake. She walked toward the dock, each step sinking slightly into the wet earth. As she reached the edge, she froze. There were footprints, bare feet, leading from the water to the shore. But not away. They ended right where she was standing. Evelyn's pulse quickened. "No?" she whispered. Then from the lake, a soft ripple spread, and a small object floated toward her. She knelt and reached out. It was a silver locket. She opened it, Inside was a tiny photograph of Daniel, and next to it, a woman in a white dress, the same woman. Written beneath the picture were the words, "Forever his bride." Evelyn dropped it, stumbling backward. Her mind raced. Who was she? Why was she haunting them? She ran back to the cabin, searching every drawer, every shelf. In the corner of the bedroom closet, behind a stack of old blankets, she found a box. It was labeled Alice. Her breath caught. She opened it. Inside were photographs, newspaper clippings, and a dried bouquet of roses. The headline on one clipping made her knees go weak. Local woman drowns in Pinebrook Lake. Mystery death under investigation. Alice Monroe, 26, was found in her wedding gown, submerged near the dock of Pinebrook Lake. Her fiancé, Daniel Morgan, was questioned but released due to lack of evidence. The room spun. Evelyn dropped the papers, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Daniel had been engaged before. His bride had died, here, in this lake, and now she was seeing her. The door creaked open. "Evie?" Daniel's voice called. "You're up early." She turned, clutching the newspaper clipping behind her back. "Daniel, who's Alice?" He froze. For a moment, the world went silent. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked quietly. She slowly pulled the clipping out, her hands shaking. "I found this. Why didn't you tell me?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Because it doesn't matter anymore?" "It doesn't matter?" she cried. "She died here, in her wedding dress." He stepped closer, his tone calm but cold. "It was an accident. She slipped off the dock." The police investigated. There was nothing more to say. Evelyn stared at him. "Then why didn't you tell me before we got married? Why hide it?" His eyes darkened. "Because I knew you react like this. You think I'm overreacting? Daniel, she's here. I've seen her." He moved closer still, lowering his voice. "Evie, sometimes people see what they want to see, especially when they're scared." She backed away, her heart pounding. "Stop talking to me like I'm insane." "I'm not," he said softly. "I'm talking to you like I love you, and I don't want you to dig into things that will only hurt you." He leaned in to kiss her, but she turned her face away. Something deep inside her screamed not to trust him. That night, she couldn't sleep again. She kept seeing Alice's face, pale, drowned, eyes open beneath the water. At midnight, she heard a soft knock at the door. "Daniel?" she called. No answer. The knock came again, slow, hollow. She walked to the door, trembling. "Who's there?" Silence. She turned the handle, and the door blew open. Cold mist rushed in, chilling her to the bone. And there she was, Alice, standing in the doorway, dripping, her eyes wide and sorrowful. Her mouth opened, water poured out as she spoke in a gurgled whisper. "Run!" Evelyn stumbled back, screaming. "What do you want from me?" Alice raised a trembling hand and pointed toward the floor. Lightning flashed, and Evelyn saw it. Mud-stained footprints led across the wooden floor, straight to where Daniel was standing behind her. "Evie," he said softly, his voice eerily calm. "Who are you talking to?" She turned. His eyes gleamed strangely in the dim light. "Daniel," she whispered. "What happened to her?" He smiled faintly. "You wouldn't understand." The storm howled outside. The lights flickered. Evelyn's heart raced. "What did you do to her?" His jaw tightened. She wouldn't stop digging. She couldn't let go. "Just like you." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. "Daniel, please tell me you didn't." He took a step closer. "I loved her. But she betrayed me, and now she won't leave us alone." "Us?" Evelyn whispered. "She's not haunting us, Daniel. She's haunting you." Before he could speak, the room went cold. Frost crept along the windows, and the fire in the hearth died out. From behind Daniel, water began to seep from the cracks in the floor, dark, murky water that rose quickly, covering his shoes, his ankles. Daniel turned, his face pale. No, not again. Evelyn backed away as the water rose higher, swirling like something alive. The ghostly figure of Alice appeared behind him, her hands reaching out. Daniel screamed as the water engulfed him, and then silence. The floor was dry again. Evelyn stood frozen, shaking violently, staring at the empty space where her husband had been. Only his wedding ring remained, glinting faintly in the moonlight. The silence after Daniel's disappearance felt heavier than any scream. Evelyn stood trembling in the middle of the cabin, her wedding gown soaked with lake mist and tears. The only sound was the slow ticking of the clock on the wall, steady, cruel, unbroken. "Daniel?" She whispered, though she knew there would be no answer. The ring he'd worn still lay on the floor. When she bent down to pick it up, it was cold, colder than ice. For a moment, she swore she could still feel the faintest pulse inside it, like a dying heartbeat. She turned it over in her palm. Inside, engraved so small she'd never noticed before, were words, "For eternity, D and A." Her stomach twisted. Daniel and Alice, not Evelyn. The storm outside raged harder than ever. Wind slammed against the windows, thunder rolling over the lake like a growl from beneath the earth. Evelyn wrapped a blanket around herself and sat by the fireplace, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had she really seen him drown before her eyes? The water had appeared out of nowhere, swallowed him, and then vanished, leaving no trace. Her mind screamed for logic, but her heart whispered what she already knew. This wasn't over. Something or someone was still here. As the night dragged on, strange sounds began echoing through the cabin. Soft footsteps. A creak upstairs. The faint laughter of a woman. Evelyn clutched Daniel's ring tightly. "Please," she whispered into the dark. "If you can hear me, tell me what you want." No answer, only the sound of rain hitting the roof. She stood slowly, walking to the window that faced the lake. Lightning illuminated the water, and for an instant, she saw two silhouettes standing side by side on the dock. Her breath caught. Daniel and Alice. Their figures glowed faintly in the storm, pale and still. Alice's hand was in his. But when Evelyn blinked, Daniel turned, and his eyes were hollow, dark voids like before. "Evelyn," his voice echoed faintly across the water. "Come home." She stumbled back, heart racing. "No, you're dead, both of you." But his voice came again, gentle, pleading. "Please, Evie, I didn't mean to hurt you. It wasn't supposed to be like this." The windows rattled. The door creaked open by itself. Cold mist seeped in. Evelyn's tears streamed down her cheeks. "Why me? Why couldn't you let me go?" "Because I loved you," the voice said, and then changed, deeper, crueler. "Because you replaced her?" Memories came flooding in, little moments she'd ignored. The way Daniel sometimes called her Ailey by mistake. The way he insisted they marry at the same chapel near Pinebrook Lake. The way he built their cabin on the same land where Alice had died. She hadn't replaced her by accident. He'd chosen her because she reminded him of the one he lost. And now, death had come to claim what was left unfinished. The door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Every candle in the cabin went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Evelyn grabbed the flashlight from the drawer, her hands shaking. She turned it on, its weak beam cutting through the black. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself. "Find the car, leave, now." She opened the front door and stepped into the storm. Rain drenched her instantly, the cold biting through her skin. The lake shimmered faintly under lightning flashes. She ran toward the gravel path, but stopped dead in her tracks. Her car was gone. In its place, tire marks led straight into the lake. Her stomach turned. She stumbled backward, horrified. Then she saw the figure again, Alice, standing at the edge of the water, veil fluttering wildly in the wind. "Please," Evelyn whispered. "What do you want from me?" Alice's pale lips moved. barely audible through the storm. The truth. The truth, Evelyn cried. What truth? He killed you, didn't he? But Alice shook her head slowly. No, we both did. Evelyn froze. Lightning struck again, and in that flash, she saw it clearly. Alice wasn't pointing at the lake anymore. She was pointing behind Evelyn. Evelyn turned, and there, standing in the shadows of the trees, was Daniel, dripping, motionless, his skin gray and eyes empty. You shouldn't have found that box, he said softly. His voice was no longer gentle, it was hollow, echoing. Daniel, Evelyn whispered, backing away. You're dead. He took a step forward, water dripping from his sleeves. You were supposed to be different. You were supposed to love me enough to forget. Forget what? She cried. That I drowned her. Her breath caught. He smiled faintly, a broken, twisted smile. She tried to leave me, Evie. Said she couldn't marry someone who could hurt her. Said she was scared of what I'd done. I only wanted to stop her from leaving, just for a second, but she fell. And then she stopped moving. Evelyn's tears mixed with the rain. You killed her? He tilted his head. I tried to love you the same way, but you found out too soon. Lightning flashed again, and suddenly he was gone. Only the whisper of the wind remained. Evelyn turned toward the lake, breath shaking. Alice still stood there, her face softer now, not hateful, just sad. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered. I didn't know. Alice's expression changed, a glimmer of peace in her hollow eyes. He can't have you too, she said softly. Run. But before Evelyn could finish, Daniel's voice came from behind again, closer this time, angry now. No one leaves me. Evelyn ran. Barefoot, soaked, she sprinted down the muddy path, branches tearing at her dress. The forest around her howled with the wind, the storm following her like a living thing. Behind her, she could hear footsteps, heavy, splashing through the mud. Evelyn. His voice thundered. You can't escape forever. She stumbled, falling hard, mud splattering across her face. The flashlight flew from her hand, landing yards away. Its beam wavered weakly, lighting a single wooden sign at the edge of the path. Pinebrook Cemetery. Her heart pounded. She crawled toward it, desperate. Maybe someone was there. Maybe she could hide. But as she reached the gate, she froze. The entire graveyard was underwater, flooded from the storm, and at the center, one tombstone stood above the rest. Her flashlight beam caught the name carved into it. Alice Monroe, beloved bride. Taken by the lake, 2018. Evelyn's breath hitched. Then she saw the second stone beside it, fresh, unmarked, waiting. She stepped closer, reading the engraving below the blank name. For eternity, together at last, a sound behind her, footsteps in the water. She turned. Daniel stood there, his suit drenched, his face lifeless. Don't fight it, he said softly. It's already done. Evelyn shook her head, sobbing. Please, don't. He raised his hand, and from the lake, cold water surged forward like a living wave. It crashed into her, dragging her down. She screamed, thrashing, reaching toward the surface. But the water was everywhere, in her mouth, her lungs, her ears, a deafening silence swallowing her whole. Through the murky darkness, she saw Alice's face again, calm now, reaching toward her. Their hands almost touched. Then everything went black. Morning came quietly. The storm was gone. The lake was still again, shimmering under soft sunlight. Sheriff Wallace stood near the dock, sipping his coffee as divers worked around the water's edge. Any luck? He called. One diver surfaced, shaking his head. No sign of her yet. But we found another ring in the silt, looks old. The sheriff sighed. That makes 3 this year. Damn place's curse. He turned to leave, but something caught his eye. A single white veil tangled in the reeds, fluttering gently in the breeze. He frowned. Bag that, The diver nodded and waded closer, lifting it from the water. It was torn, mud-streaked. But beneath the grime, a faint embroidery shimmered in gold thread. ECNDM. That night, the cabin by the lake stood silent once more. The wind whispered through the trees. Inside, in the faint moonlight, two figures could be seen reflected in the dusty mirror, a bride and groom, holding hands, smiling. But outside the reflection, the room was empty. Only the ring sat on the table, beside two dried roses, one for Alice, one for Evelyn. And the lake, dark and endless, rippled softly, as if something beneath had finally found peace.